Welcome to the Stay Hungry podcast. Today, we are joined by Kirk McCarley. Welcome.
Thank you, Matt. It's my pleasure to be here or anywhere for that matter.
That is fair. It's all a good place, right? I brought you on here because you've had quite the journey with your career. 35 years in HR. You've been a spinning instructor, worked with ESPN, wrote a book, which is crazy, and currently in your career, you're a certified life and career coach where you really help people to find their purpose and their clarity. So you've done quite a bit here. You're very qualified, obviously. But as to begin things here, take us back. Where did all this start for you personally with your life and your career?
Once again, Matt, thanks for having me.
Absolutely,
It's
yes.
to spend time with you. I'm a native Texan, grew up in Fort Worth, and as a youngster, had an interest in athletics, sports, and I was pretty good at it, basketball, baseball. But what really fascinated me was the statistical aspect of that, and I'll get back to that in a minute. Went on to college in that area, met my wife at school, and was in a fraternity. I functioned as the recruiting coordinator there. So that led to another career path later on. And one of my fraternity brothers was a broadcast communications major. He happened to get a gig in the first year of the franchise with the Dallas Mavericks in the NBA.
Wow.
And so we'll put a bookmark on that for a moment and come back to it in a minute. So my wife I met in 1978. We got married in 1980. And I went to work for a company in Oklahoma City. And early in that career, I had mentioned, hey, I'm really fascinated by this human resources component. I know a little bit about recruiting because I worked in recruitment for my fraternity. I didn't know anything about recruiting, but the
They didn't know
company,
that though, right? So
they didn't know that.
exactly.
Anyway, they terminated the personnel director, personnel manager, and put me in that place. And so that launched that career, 1981. And I remained in that until 2017 for 36 years.
Wow.
So, along 1989, my broadcast communication buddy got an assignment doing what was then Southwest Conference football. And this predated that conference discontinuing. That was in 1996. And he needed a statistician. I mentioned before I was always interested in the statistical aspect of sports. So he said, would you like to do that? I said, sign me up. So 38 years later, I am still doing that. When the conference disbanded, we transitioned over to ESPN. They had an upstart network at the time in 1996, ESPN2. And by golly, we're probably ESPN 17 now. Who knows? But that organization, component of the Disney organization, has just exploded. So I've been with ESPN now for about 30 of those 38 years doing statistics in college football, a little bit NFL football, basketball at the collegiate level, men and women's, baseball and softball. So late in that HR career, I wanted to try something else. I'd been doing it for a long, long time. What is that something else going to be? And I retained the services of a coach. And I was contemplating several different things as possibilities to go into. But about the third meeting I had with my coach, I said, I want to do what you do. It was sort of a natural transition from HR. And I was just fascinated by the process of getting to coach people and get them hopefully to a better place. I'd been doing that a lot, particularly in the late stages of my career in HR. So that was in 2013. I got some education in coaching and launched my business 10 years ago. Life coaching, executive coaching, career coaching, leadership coaching. So that's how I got into all those avenues that I'm involved with now.
So it's very people heavy because with the HR is people there, and then coaching currently it's also very people heavy there. But it's probably very different, I'm guessing, from the HR side of things now coaching, I'm gonna guess, right?
There are some similarities, but the biggest part of that component of it that separates the two, whereas in HR there was advice given, in coaching, not so much. We operate as coaches. The client, when we've asked some deep and penetrating questions, know what they want to do. It's buried somewhere in their head. Our job as a coach is to get that out and then serve as an accountability partner to that individual as they start to develop their plan and then execute that plan for what it is that they want to do. So more intentional, I would say, very
Right.
direct, one-on-one. That's the biggest distinction.
Is it kind of tough because in some ways you're their therapist, their coach, their life coach, career stuff, with all these things in one like umbrella for like your job, right?
They want me sometimes to be a therapist, but I
I
refrain
bet you.
from that. There
Yeah.
are professionals that are in that line of work that do excellent work. I'll work alongside therapists, but they're working with someone that's maybe having an addiction problem, maybe a marital problem, something that transcends the workplace, or maybe building relationships, which is what I get involved with. So, advice giving is, again, the biggest distinction. Coaches tend to not do that so much, but we will present stories, things that we've experienced as points of illustration to help somebody who's trying to figure out their path.
I so your main focus then is on careers, like the whole like connections. Then it sounds like for your side of things for coaching.
Careers, where you want to get to,
Okay.
developing your personal strategic plan, but that can get into family life as well. I've worked with people who have families, and how do we manage these kids effectively? And there are a lot of similar crossovers between how you lead people in the workforce and how you do so at home. There are distinctions, but there are a lot of common practices that can cross over between the two.
Like what?
Well, I'll use an example. I've worked with an individual that struggling with getting young kids to do chores. And the crossover in that is delegation in the workplace. I can't get these people that are working for me, to execute the job the way I would like them to do that. And we get into questions: to what degree have you demonstrated how you want the job done? Is there additional education that's needed? Have you given them the opportunity to do that and maybe fail? Similarly, in the house, you ask your 10-year-old kid, your job is to take out the trash. They don't do it, they don't do it. Eventually, you end up doing it. You've not delegated. So, the parallels of delegation, as one example, can go hand in hand with how you lead in the workplace, how you lead at home.
Interesting. So that's very like strategy based, right? I'm curious, how often is it that versus like a mindset problem for like your clients that you deal with?
Sometimes that is a mindset problem, delegation in and of itself,
I see.
because the mindset becomes, I can do this better than anybody else can, so I'm just going to do it. And what happens, let's say in the work environment, is your staff gets bored, they're not motivated. I don't have anything to do that's meaningful. I'm not being developed. And there are two reasons, basically, that people will leave a job 85% of the time. Fundamentally, it comes down to they don't know what their job is, and the other is they don't know how well they're doing in the job. And it's typically not money. If they're being compensated fairly and adequately, those other two are going to be the guiding mechanism. And you talk to somebody after they've left someplace, they never told me what my job was. I didn't really understand it. That's a fault of leadership there. Similarly, we'll go back to the household for just a second. He told me to take out the trash. He didn't say, or she didn't say, which trash to take out, how to take it out, what trash day was, what time of day we had to put it out. And whenever I attempted to do it, it was always wrong. And I got berated for that. So guess what? I want to avoid pain. So I'm just going to stop doing it. I would rather get yelled at home for not doing it than to do it wrong.
So you're saying to make it very like detailed and tell them what you want them to do. How do you balance that and like trusting the people to do their jobs for themselves?
You have to give a little bit, I think, of yourself. And that is to say, they're not doing it exactly the same way that I would do it. They're doing it a different way. It may be better, it may be worse, but what is the desired outcome that you want? It's kind of like being the parent of adult kids, which I am, for example. And we don't give our kids advice, or we try not to, but we love it when they do because it gives us an opportunity to share our opinion on different things. So instead, we do a lot of listening, we do encouragement, we will ask questions. How do you feel? How does your husband feel? How does your wife feel about this decision that you're going to make? What are the reservations that you have? What do you see as the benefits? And give them some deep questions to contemplate themselves to hopefully come to the most educated decision that they can make. Similar in the workforce. Give them the opportunity to think, to contemplate, and they may come up with a better solution than you would have thought of. And guess who gets credit for that? They do, but you also do, because you become known as a developer of talent. How many coaches did Nick Saban put into college football? Now, some people may disagree with his tactics, but has he been effective? Yes. And I think one time last year, there were 4 of the top 5 ranked teams in the country were coached by coaches that were directly off the Nick Saban coaching tree.
Interesting. Yeah, they all have coaches, which is very interesting to point out that they all have their own coach separately. Front, you've seen, how does that coaching help someone to change their life in that way?
I'll often hear, Matt, somebody comment that I haven't thought about that in a long time. So it's like a dream that gets buried or stuffed. Well, let's resurrect that. And when I coach somebody, I'll use this metaphor. Let's consider ourselves going on a hike. We're going to blaze a trail that maybe we've not been on before, maybe we have, but there'll be a diversion over here. It says such and such falls. I wonder what that is. And the client will say, I'd like to explore that. Let's uncover that a little bit more. So we'll deviate off that path. Oh, this is wonderful. If I had not been open to changing the path I was on, I never would have discovered this. Well, let's then spend some time here. What are you learning from this metaphorical experience of having gone through that? Try new things. What is a new thing that you need to try? When are you going to try it by? And you become an accountability partner as a coach.
So you're kind of like guiding them through this journey to be more open to maybe X, Y, and Z. So if they're now open to something, how do you go from that to then changing that behavior?
Change is going to take a while.
I imagine.
I'll use another metaphor, and this is for people who may be listening who are golfers. We have a certain way of golfing, holding a club, but let's say we go take a lesson, and that golf pro is going to rearrange our grip on the club. Guess what's going to happen? It's going to feel uncomfortable. This isn't right. My score may actually go up just a little bit, but for the long term, the long run, you're going to get better than you were before. So there's some stick-to-itiveness that's involved with it. There's some trial and error with trying new methods. It's putting your own flavor a little bit on what that method's going to be. You know, I could change this grip on the golf club, and if I back up my balancing foot maybe 1 inch, I may have a more open way of swinging that golf club, which will be helpful to me. So you go to the coach the next time, hey, coach, look what I did. And the coach will say, I was hoping that you would try that. And so you've opened that person up to considering new things on their own as well. And they get their own personal results. That's how they make it their own.
Right. Well, that way, though, you're having to fail because you're having to fail and then pivot, fail, pivot just over and over again, which a lot of people aren't going to be cool with like failing, that many times there.
Thomas Edison came up with the light bulb that we're using in both of our venues right now.
Yeah.
And he probably came up with what we would say is the incorrect solution 1,000 times. He viewed it not as failure, but as education, that there is another way of doing it. I know not to do it this way now. Now, let me try this method of going about doing it. So, would we say he was successful at inventing a light bulb? Yes, but there were a lot of failures that preceded that. Michael Jordan missed more of the last second shots he took than he made, but we remember him as being successful more than 50% of the time. In actuality, he wasn't, but he was money at the most critical moments. So I think the encouragement for most of us, you can make mistakes. Don't make the same mistake again. Learn from it. Do something different. And you don't want to have somebody saying, why did you do this again? I thought you learned this time.
That's the goal, right? That's the goal there. How do you balance knowing when to not quit and then knowing that this is not for me, like this career, this like sector?
Well, that's a great question. And that can be in the work environment. That can be in relationships. I'm just not into her or she's not into me, and I can tell it, but I don't want to hurt somebody's feelings either. So we continue to go along as opposed to ripping the Band-Aid off, which is what we should do.
Yes.
For some people, immediately, let's say in a work environment, you're asked to do something that violates company ethics and policy, or maybe your own personal ethics as to what's appropriate or not. You've asked me to do something that's a line that I'm just not going to cross, and I can't tolerate that. I had a situation like that in my last work assignment in HR, where I was asked to do something that I couldn't do ethically, and I paid dearly for that. I was able to survive with that organization and eventually walk off into the sunset and start my coaching business. I was vindicated later because the chief executive of the organization was later indicted and convicted of bribery. Wow. Spent time in federal prison along with a number of other people in that organization. It cost me financially, but the reward was my integrity was kept intact. So, in answer to your question, those kinds of things, I think if you've got a strong locus of internal control, they become pretty obvious. If it's one where I'm just not growing in this situation, why am I not growing? I've talked to people, my leader, my boss, about how to have a greater impact, what I need to do. I have applied those principles and it's just not working for me. Maybe then it's time to look at different opportunities, or you reinvent the way you're looking at that job. Maybe this is the wrong place for me to be, or the wrong assignment. Is there something else that I could do in this organization and I could succeed with?
Right. I want to now pivot, because you've had the same spouse now for a very long time, which is not very common these days. You have maybe like a 9-year marriage, or I don't know how long it is, but do you have tips for like how someone can do that in their own life too?
Well, guys, I outkicked my coverage with her for sure. She was She was a real catch in college. She still is. And we've been married now for 46 years. We had somebody ask us this just the other day, and I would say number one, laugh a lot, have some commonality of things that you can look back on, remember, draw from, hopefully grow together through those experiences, and encourage one another. I'm quite proud of her. She has, Matt, a tremendous eye. She sees things, physical things that most people will not see. She's an interior designer. And so she'll do before and afters, and she does hand rendering in her business, which is a lost art. She's very artistic, but she'll show me things and she'll ask me about it. And I'm kind of, how do you see that? And it's just kind of the same thing with me in statistics. She'll come to me and say, what's 6 out of 17? And I'll say 35.3%. And she'll say, how did you come up with that? And I'm like, I don't know. I just did. So appreciating each other's unique God-given gifts and talents and encouraging one another through that, being proud of your spouse, laughing a lot, having a focus which is not on you, but it's on that relationship. For those that have a faith, as we do, a higher power that transcends us.
Right, that way you're on the same team there for like your faith, for like your career, for both your goals there. You wrote your own book too. I have the title here somewhere. It's Thoughts for My Kids and then other people's kids too. So can you go more into that?
How that came about, it's an interesting story. We have been here in Northwest Florida now for 9 years, and that was early in my business after we left the St. Louis area. And there is a monthly tabloid here that I met the person who was the publisher, and I was trying to promote my business, quite frankly. And I said, could I get some space in your tabloid to write some articles? And so he saw some examples of what I've been blogging. So he said, yeah, come on board. So that was in 2018. So I've had that relationship for over 8 years now. And it's been enjoyable because I can write what's on my mind, what's on my blog, what I've observed, what I've experienced, what I've seen that works, what I've seen that doesn't work so well, plus a few sports stories here and there and some stories about faith as well. So this was a few years back. He said, Kirk, you got a lot of good material here. You ought to write a book. And I said, okay, pardon me. So I did a little research on that. And this is the most interesting statistic that I found is there are about 80% of Americans that at one time or another have a desire to write a book, but less than 3% actually do. Matt, I've never been top 3% in anything. Here was my opportunity. So that was my motivation. I'm going to write a book. I'm going to use it as a tool for coaching. It's a large business card. And it was a lot of fun for me to put together. And not just that, but now to be able to say, I'm an author. And I've got more blogs that I've written since then. And so there'll probably be a second publication in the next year or two that I'll put together then. And then I'll probably retire from authorship unless Steven Spielberg comes calling and says, I want to make a movie. You never know. Yeah.
Can you share one thought from that book?
Communication comes to mind. And this was something I picked up on probably 30 years ago when I was working in HR in a small community in Texas. And it was the leader of two different organizations, governmental organizations. One who was an outstanding communicator, I thought. He even had a deep baritone voice. Oh. Sometimes it sounded like what the voice of God would be. But right. he was strong in communications. The other leader was what we call an againer. And by that phraseology, against everything. And I'm running on this platform to fight and to not cooperate and to be against everything. So the person who I admired took the other person to lunch or vice versa, but they were talking about governmental relations. And so the person who was the againer asked the communicator, "What do people think about me?" And he was taken aback, my boss, a little bit by that. But he said, "Would you ask me that question again?" "Yeah. What do people think about me?" And his response was he now had permission, one, to share what was on his mind. And his response was, "People think you're angry." And there's a correlation, and I've learned it in coaching, between anger and fear. And so you come across as less than the leader that you could be because that anger manifests in fear, and people don't want to follow somebody who is fearful and who is angry. They're looking for some behavior that they can model, that they can mimic, and you're not providing them that. You have the possibility, I believe, of doing that, but it's going to require some examination and some change first before you get there. So, what I learned from that, ask for permission to give advice, and maybe ask for it a couple of times to affirm that it's really wanted. And now you've got the platform to share it articulately and thoughtfully, and not with meanness, but from a standpoint of, I'm for you, I'm encouraging you, I really want you to get better because this whole community will prosper if you do. And that's what we both want.
Right. I want to now pivot to your health because you're a very healthy guy. You teach the spinning class, which I don't even know what that is actually. Can you like go like more into like that whole space of yours for the health side of things?
Spinning is exercising on a stationary bicycle that is specially equipped for that activity. Instead of having a traditional front tire, there is no back tire because it's stationary. It's a 45-pound flywheel that you apply tension to, depending on if you want to replicate sprinting, speed work, or if you want to be climbing. So you put more tension on it, it's going to feel like a 7, 8, 9% grade hill. And the exhortation as a spinning instructor is, let's give it some cadence now. Pick up your speed to take ourselves to a point of being breathless. Then we're going to come down from that hill. You're going to gain your breath back again. And then we're going to get your heart rate, your cardio system back up. So it's a combination of strength and cardio. You'll probably, for a guy that's over 200 pounds like me, I'll burn about 700 or 800 calories in a 1 hour class.
Oh my goodness.
And it is wonderful training for one of my hobbies, which is cycling. And so I didn't compete, but I participated, I should say, recently, a couple or 3 weeks ago, in a bike ride across Georgia, going from the northwest corner of the state down to a southwestern community that was there, with a lot of meandering along the way. And Matt, there's about 1,200 of us that did that, and our reward at the end of each day, it was a 7-day event, is we get to pitch our tent and camp out and hope the weather is cool enough, decent enough that we can enjoy that.
7 days. So you're a bit crazy, but like not like the right kind of crazy though. It sounds like so.
I'm an idiot.
Hey, but it's working for you, you know. So something's right there.
Yeah, most recently, I used to not have this bow in my shoulder here. That's a new addition of about 11 weeks ago. I was cycling, and I was signaling a left turn. I was about at my mile 60. I was going to do a metric century, which would be 100 kilometers that day. Had about 2.5 miles to go. Signaled left. A person in a pickup truck behind me misinterpreted my signal as being a go-ahead, although he knew intellectually what I was saying. But he was not able to apply the brakes. He ran into me. I was knocked unconscious. He was surprised. I have no memory of it till about 45 minutes later, being airlifted to a trauma 2 hospital. And once there, was diagnosed with 5 broken ribs, this separated shoulder, partially torn rotator cuff, 16 stitches in the head, and a
Goodness.
concussion on top of that. So from that event, 2 things happened. First, I want to get myself back on a bike again and overcome that potential fear of, am I going to get hit again? I'd like to be back on the bike riding across Georgia. But the other thing, which was kind of a spiritual thing for me, is I contacted the guy who hit me. He was in the police report. It was his fault. And I said, it's an accident. These things happen. And I forgive you. And we have since gotten together. We've developed a relationship. He's a cool guy. He's a military vet. And so it is interesting how these contacts can come about in awkward kinds of ways and lead to something that's really cool.
Well, for most people, they probably wouldn't have done that, right? To contact the guy and then reach out to him and all that. Why is that for like your faith, like your spirituality in that way?
Well, that's so out of character for me, first of all, Matt.
Was it? Okay, fair enough.
I mean, I'm not a gentle, tender person. I guess I can be. My wife has put up with that, but I tend to be pretty organized and Enneagram 5, logical, analytical. That's me. So it was a power outside of me that prompted that, said, contact this guy. And so, okay, it's kind of like writing a book. I did, and some wonderful things have come as a result of that. I don't wish that it wouldn't have happened. I do that, but I can see the benefit that has come as a result of what was a traumatic experience, not just for me, but for my kids, for my wife. She got visited by the sheriff's office the day it happened, and sheriff deputy came to the front door. He says, there's been an accident and your husband's being airlifted. And she was just stunned and astonished by that, as you could well imagine. It helped her that I still had my cell phone with me. And on her way to the hospital, I came to again, and I called her, and she heard my voice, and I said, yeah, your idiot husband has survived this. I'll see you soon.
That is funny. Yeah, man, this is some tangent, but you're like a big like stats guy, right? I'm curious, like your favorite stats. It could be about life or sports or something. Like your favorite stats out there that you know of.
On June 12th, 1970, I was just sharing this with a friend of mine today. Doc Ellis was a pitcher for the Pittsburgh Pirates. He twirled a no-hitter against the San Diego Padres that night. However, he had not expected to be the starting pitcher, but he got a call and he was actually out of town with friends in LA imbibing LSD. So he pitched a no-hitter, walked 8, hit a batter because he couldn't see the catcher's mitt. And at one time, he was convinced that the umpire was former President Richard Nixon, and that the batter that was facing him was Jimi Hendrix with a guitar in his hand.
But he was pretty much out of it. It sounds like
he was out of it.
Totally out of it.
His catcher realized that and taped reflective tape on his hand and on his glove so that there would be some way that he could maybe identify where the general direction to throw the ball. But no hitter, Doc Ellis, one of the most amazing feats. Talking about people under the influence, Don Larson in the 1956 World Series with a severe hangover, no hits the Brooklyn Dodgers as a Yankee. So
wow,
these are just thoughts that are coming to mind. I don't know why, of people who were under the influence and had tremendous sporting feats. Now, there are other clean feats, obviously, but that's what's on my mind. And you asked.
Cool stats.
Yeah.
Well, you have been fantastic. I'm curious for like your last thoughts or tip what that would be to the audience.
I come up with a word every year. Last year, the word was move. And I come across so many clients. How are you? I'm stuck. How do we get unstuck? We move. Sometimes it's moving in the wrong direction, but you're doing something, and you can always ask for forgiveness for doing something. You cannot for doing nothing. So this year, I've transitioned. What's your word going to be? It's going to be connect. We've connected today. Who else do I need to connect with? Who do I need to reconnect with? And not just for me, maybe for them, but it may lead to something for me. So it's networking, and I'm trying to do that 5 days a week with somebody I've maybe lost contact with and need to reinitiate that with. So move, connect. Those will be my 2 words to leave as a takeaway.
There you go. If people want to find you online, where can they go to?
I'm on Instagram, Kirk McCarley. I have a website, theseedsowercoach.com. I also have an author's landing page, kirkmccarleyauthor.com. I'm on LinkedIn. I've got a Facebook page as well, so I'm well covered on social media. Or you can just call me. I have the number listed on my LinkedIn and on my website, so I love to hear from somebody who would like to talk sports for sure, but if I can help you from a standpoint of career and getting to where you want to be, I'd love to help you to do that.
Well, there you go, guys. Go find him or go call him, I guess. Thank you all for being here and tuning in. Until next time, stay hungry.